Hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome to our show titled Speak of Africa. We thank you very much for watching. If this is the first time you're watching this show, my name is Prince Ojong, your host. We thank our subscribers and we thank those who make a lot of comments. When you comment, we know what you like and what you don't like. So we think those who comment are doing a great job. We thank you for commenting. For the show of today, we've realized that you guys are really interested in us talking about La République du Cameroun. We're going to do that again today. For today, we're going to ask you a question. What happens to Cameroon when Paul Biya dies? Nobody is talking about it. That's what we want to talk about on this show today. When Paul Biya announced that he's going to create the post of vice president, it sounded like a mechanism for transition. Yes, it is a diabolical tool that's going to be used to make it easy for Biya to choose who he wants to succeed him. But already the power struggle for succession is secret. It has started. It has begun. If you do not know this, it has begun. There are a lot of factors that are going to count when what happens to Cameroon when Paul Biya dies. Biya is old. He has ruled Cameroon for over 43 years. His health is not good. Cameroonians know this. They've announced his death so many times prematurely. But already we know that in the month of May, so many pillars of the Biya regime have kicked the bucket. I mentioned them last week. There are so many of them. Kave Jibril, Niet Jifenji, they all kicked the bucket. And many others. In the military, they are all falling like flies. So, any reasonable person knows that in philosophy, whatever has a beginning must have an end. So, if Biya had a beginning, Biya also must have an end. Philosophically, that's the premise. But what is going to happen to La République du Cameroun? Biya has controlled Cameroon since 1982 officially. Before that, he was still controlling the country under Ojong because he was the guy in charge of all documents. But officially, when he took over power as president, that's when his power became obvious. So what is going to happen to this colossus who has ruled Cameroon without sharing power with anybody else? What's going to happen to Cameroon? Let's start looking first at the factors because we're going to give you all the secret information. The first factor is foreign influence. As you know, Cameroon has never chosen its president. The president of Cameroon has always been chosen by foreign influence. Foreign countries like France, the United States, China, Russia, they always contribute to who is the leader in that country. And is this going to change? So that's a factor for you to consider. What about the CPDM machinery? The Paul Biya regime has that machinery which is called CPDM, Cameroon People's Democratic Movement. It is really the party, it's like an apparatus that works itself out to do everything for Paul Biya, rig elections, do all that nonsense. So this is also going to be another factor. When Paul Biya dies, the CPDM machinery is going to be a factor in the succession struggle. What about Ambazonia? Ambazonia revolution is also going to be a factor. When we ask what happens to Cameroon when Paul Biya dies, the Ambazonia revolution is going to be a factor. So mark my words. Okay? Then what about youth discontent? Well, in a few days, it will be 20th May. Cameroon is going to be celebrating. But are the youth happy? No, the youth are not happy. The people are discontented. You could see this when Issa Chiroma rose. He galvanized support very, very quickly. In just a few weeks, he galvanized support all over La République du Cameroun. People ask, why was it so easy for him to do this? Because 98% of the population do not like Paul Biya. They are jaded, they're tired with his rule, which has brought them nothing but misery and suffering. When you look at the Dutch ships in Yaoundé and Douala, they reflect the decay of Cameroon under Paul Biya. It's like the country stood still and just started going backwards. regressing. While other countries are progressing, Cameroon has been going backwards because it is not governed by anybody. Biya is just interested in staying in power, squandering the resources. He does not care about developing the country. And of course, the French forces will not let him develop the country too. Sadly, even in his own village, people complain that nothing has developed. So why do you think he's going to develop your village? If he has not developed his own village, why is he going to develop your own village? So the youth also are angry. Some of them have been leaving the country in search of greener pastures. Many Cameroonians have been dying at sea in the Mediterranean. Then even with the Russian-Ukrainian war, this opened another frontier for discontented Cameroonian youth. They have been signing up to fight in Ukraine, and they have been dying by their numbers. So these are some of the factors that will really affect what happens to Cameroon when Paul Biya dies. But you ask me, what are some of the scenarios that I think can happen? I'm going to give you 3 scenarios, 3 possible scenarios. It's like I have a crystal ball. I'm talking to you now. The first scenario is control succession. What I see happening in Cameroon is control succession, which means the succession of Paul Biya is stage managed. It's managed behind the scenes. Already, I think this part of the succession struggle has started, or if you don't know, it has started already. They are already thinking about the day Biya is going to die, and they are already preempting it. Even the election of October was already part of the calculus. Ferdinand Gongo went and met Paul Biya and said, listen, Mr. President, in order to prepare the way for you, make things easy for you to win the next presidential election, we need to eliminate Maurice Kamto. He must not run. We have to disqualify him. We're going to use all the tools at our disposal to disqualify Maurice Kamto, because we want to control who's going to succeed you. Then once you win this election falsely, then we're going to look for a way to create the post of vice president. Then we will stage manage this, come up with a candidate of our choice who will take over Cameroon after you die. So that's the most possible scenario in Cameroon. That has already started. And when you look at the control succession, a lot of candidates, since the announcement of the post of vice president, a lot of people are clamoring to win Biya's favor. People start with Frank-Emmanuel Biya, the first son of Paul Biya. The Frankies have been floating his candidacy, and a lot of people are saying that it's a done deal. Frank-Emmanuel Biya would be the one occupying the post of vice president. In fact, it has been rumored that before the Pope Leo arrived in Cameroon, the arrangement was for Frank-Emmanuel Biya to receive the Pope as the vice president of Cameroon. What about John Gute? He's an Anglophone. These people don't care about Anglophones. So it's not somebody who matters to them. So the arrangement was for Frank-Emmanuel Biya to receive the Pope. This will expose him to the international community. They will see him in action as vice president. But what happened? Chantal Biya threw a wrench in this plan, and everything failed. Why? Because Chantal Biya herself has her own candidates. As we've told you in the past, there's the Game of Thrones, the War of the Clans. When you look at where Biya comes from, there are 3 groups. You have the Etones, the Bulus, and the Ewondos. Biya is part of the Bulus. So the Bulus are fighting for power, the Ewondos are fighting for power, then the Etones also are fighting for power. So all these 3 groups are jockeying for power. But the 2 dominant ones are the Ewondos and the Bulus. Chantal Biya represents the Ewondos from Nangai Boko. Ferdinand Gongo's plan was to make Ferdinand Gongo the de facto president, now official president of Cameroon. But with time, she changed her ideas. Now she's waffling, she's vacillating between Ferdinand Gongo's candidacy and the candidacy of her own son, Frank Hirsch. Frank Hirsch is one of those kids Chantal Biya had before she got married to Paul Biya. This kid has never been in the limelight, but as the gossip about succession in Cameroon takes place, his name has been coming up more and more. People who don't like Frank Emmanuel Biya have been saying that, okay, Chantal now wants her own son to be the next president of Cameroon, so they're going to nominate him as vice president. There's even the story somebody leaked from the presidency telling us that the documents were already prepared. The announcement was supposed to be made that Frank Emmanuel Biya would be the next vice president of Cameroon. But because Chantal did not like this plan, she ran to the presidency, the president's office on the 3rd floor of a 2D, and created a lot of commotion, and they had to abandon that meeting, so everything was suspended. Okay? So she has been vacillating between her own son, Frank Hess, and Ferdinand Gongo. People don't know much about Frank Hess. Frank Hess is Edge Logistics. That's his company. So he's a small business person. He's using his presidential connections to make money in the oil business in Cameroon. Okay? That's what he does. And he thinks he's a businessman. So he and Frank Emmanuel Biya are now competing for this position. So who is going to win? Toto Power is working also. You know, Chantal uses that, her female wiles, to try to make things work in the presidency. Biya himself is not a man of action anymore, as the people tell us. So Chantal and Ferdinand Gongo are the ones running the show. Then, of course, you get a guy like Paul Atanganji. He's the attack dog. So this triumvirate is the one really running things in Cameroon. Ferdinand Gongo is the CEO. Chantal is the supreme godmother. Then Atanganji is attack dog. So whenever they need to attack anybody, they send Atanganji. The other day, I saw Atanganji walking as if he was a guy who was terribly sick, no energy. And this is the same guy who is challenging General Esai. General Esai is even speaking at the pulpit in his church against Paul Atanganji. So you could see that. So these are the guys who are really ready now to work on this controlled succession. They want to make sure that the CPDM should stay intact even after Biya dies. That's the plan. So controlled succession is the first scenario that is already happening in front of your eyes. So if you don't have eyes to see, I'm giving you eyes to see. This is what is happening in La République du Cameroon. So the first scenario, controlled succession, is already taking place. The power struggle may be secret, but it's already taking place. Biya himself knows this. That's why he's just laughing when he watches the number of people who want to be vice president. It keeps increasing by the day. By the day, it's increasing. Okay? So these are the main guys who really want to take power. The numbers keeps increasing. So the CPDM, they want to stay intact after Biya leaves. But is this scenario going to hold? Well, as I say in the real world, man proposes, God disposes. This scenario may not hold. Everything is working towards a controlled succession. But is this going to happen? There are always surprises in life. And a surprise may be a popular uprising. In Cameroon, the discontent is very, very high. Look at what happened to Issa Chiroma. Issa Chiroma rose to victory in those elections in October because of popular discontent. The youth are angry. There are no jobs for the youth. The youth have no future. Most of them are running away to Europe in search of greener pastures. Cameroon has failed economically. When you look at Biya's speech when he took over, he was talking about la rigueur in management, morality, proper good governance. But did it happen? No. The people around him just steal, and himself, they steal and steal and steal. So where are they going to have the money now to build a country? Even when he came up with this program, a PVA, the guy who was supposed to be in charge of a PVA, Alain Mebengo, he ended up being one of the big thieves. And they had to arrest him when they found out that he was buying a lot of weapons to take over the government himself. They tried to stop him in advance. They used to call him Le Dauphin. So when you look at this scenario, the people are very, very angry. So do not be surprised. Statisticians have looked at the situation in Cameroon, and they say Cameroon is a powder cake. It just takes a little match to strike, and the fire would engulf the whole of that country. So a popular uprising is a second scenario that we will see in Cameroon. It may happen. We are not saying that it's going to happen, but it might happen. So that's the second possibility, popular uprising, because the people are really angry. When you look at Cameroon, even in a political sense, there is no democracy. When you look at the constitution, you think you have a democratic country. But now we still see the politics of exclusion. Biya is in power. He runs the country with his cronies, whether he's abroad in Switzerland, Hotel Intercontinental, or in his village. He has his cronies everywhere. He's in the shadows. You don't see him, but he's acting under the guise of his proxies. Like Atanganji, Mebengo is gone, but now it's Ngongo Ferdinand, who is the CEO, the actual president of the country, the acting president of the country. Chantal dictates the instructions. He follows verbatim. That's what is happening. Are the people happy with this? The people already know that Biya is not the one giving these instructions. In fact, Laurent Esso, the Minister of Justice, has complained many times because of this so-called haute instruction, elevated instruction, presidential instructions. He knows those instructions are not coming from Paul Biya himself. He knows those instructions are manufactured by Chantal, then delivered to Ferdinand Gongo. So sometimes the people want to just disrespect or disobey those instructions because they know they are not coming from the real president who claimed to have been elected by the people. So that's the problem. Okay? Laurent Esso is not accepting it. Then even in the government, you have other members of government who are not accepting this so-called haute instruction because they know they are fake. So there's a lot of discontent because the people are not happy. Look at what happened in Gabon when Oligui Nguema took over from Ali Bongo. Ali Bongo's wife, Sylvie, was running the country just the way Chantal Biya is running. She thought she got it made until one angry military guy called Oligui Nguema threw a wrench and took over power in that country and put Sylvie Bongo in prison. Today, even when you tell Chantal Biya that she may end up in prison, she doesn't believe it. She cannot see a scenario where she will end up in prison because she is the godmother. Biya Paul calls her Madame la Presidente. Okay? So she is enjoying a co-presidency with her husband. The husband is president, she too is president. As far as she knows it, she's also president. She makes rules. Now that her husband is aged and dying, she is the power broker who makes all the decisions. And the people know it. If you displease her, you pay for it. Le Contre-Admiral Fouda tried it in Hotel Intercontinental. She hit him with the heels of her shoes. Fouda got the message that, oh, you don't mess up with this lady. She's the one in charge. So those are the points. Economically, there is hardship. There is hardship. And you know, revolutions are always started because of hardship. Look at the French Revolution. What started it? Look at the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. In Russia, what started it? So economic factors would always work themselves out to create a revolution. Then, of course, societal anxiety. Now, the psyche of the average Cameroonian is destroyed. They just panic, fear. So people don't know what to do. In this kind of scenario, anything can happen. And we are really afraid what may happen. Finally, we're going to take you to the third scenario, which is a military takeover. For so many years, Biya has been manipulating things, rearranging the army in such a way that a coup d'etat should not take place. But coup d'etats have taken place in a lot of neighboring African countries. Gabon, for example. There's a coup d'etat that failed in Gabon, later on, another one happened. Olingingema won and took over the country. So don't rule out the possibility of a military takeover in Cameroon. Biya has placed a lot of his tribesmen at the top of the military echelon. So most of the top generals, the top officers are all from Biya's tribe. This is meant to ensure that only the officers who are loyal to him have power in the country. You'll be surprised that a general from, say, Kumba, Victoria, who is an Anglophone, he may be a general just in name, but this general does not have political power. It doesn't have force. Because if the military has to take over in La République du Cameroon, they have to use force. So Biya makes sure that the equipment, the armory, is secure and in the hands of his loyal subjects. How are you going to make a coup against him when you don't have any weapons? I think Anglophones learned the hard way when they started fighting La République du Cameroon. Because when you don't have weapons, how are you going to fight a guy who is well armed, armed to the teeth? They will crush you. And that's what they have been doing. They are well equipped. So the third scenario now is a military takeover. The military takeover may even be by somebody in Biya's entourage. It may not even be from Ambazonia or from a northeast, General Buba. It may even be a general from Biya's tribe. Because after a while, people would see that, okay, when the civilians start bickering, which is what is going to be happening, especially when Biya dies, there's going to be a lot of bickering. We can already foresee that. People start bickering, then eventually they have to look for ways to seize power. And the military will use this as justification to seize power from civilians who are quarreling. They will say, we want to set order. There's chaos. So we want to restore order to the country. We don't want the country to be destroyed. That's the excuse the military is going to use for the coup d'etat they're going to organize. Of course, a coup d'etat has taken place in Cameroon before, and that's why Biya has been so panic-stricken. He's always afraid that another coup d'etat is coming. Because back in '83, when they organized this coup d'etat, it was really tough. I was already in the United States when this coup d'etat happened. I was on the campus of American University. My parents barely survived this coup. They almost died because our house was just facing Garde Républicaine. My father was sick at the time, so he was just bedridden. I had a sister too. My whole family decided to just stay in the house and wait for death. But as God will have it, the big machine guns were sitting right in front of our house and shooting. So God just saved my family. And I thank God for that. But the coup d'etat was real. Eventually, they picked this guy up because he was in France and always playing games. He was in Burkina Faso, but eventually picked him up. Okay? They picked him up because Biya made him persona non grata. So Biya is afraid of coups. He always makes sure that another coup doesn't happen. But there's no way you can proof a country against coups. Coups happen because the people are not happy. It just takes an ambitious person to strike. In Cameroon, you have a lot of ambitious people, but Biya has used money to make them lose the fire of ambition. Yet, when Biya dies, the military guys are going to take some bold steps and take over the country. Because for so long, civilians have been enjoying. Only the top brass in the military are enjoying. So the middle officers may want to do something to also make money from the treasury of Cameroon. And this is why we see this as a third scenario, the military takeover. So I've presented three scenarios. What happens to Cameroon when Paul Biya dies? As I've said, it is inevitable that Biya is going to die anytime soon. Look at his age. Biya is over 94 years old. Most of his collaborators are dying. This month of May has seen the death of so many of Biya's key collaborators, key persons. So Biya himself cannot say, I will never die. Even though some people in Cameroon believe Biya is a god, I disagree. Biya is not a god. Biya has to obey the laws of nature. The same way some of these collaborators are obeying the laws of nature, they are falling like flies. But for some people, Biya is a colossus, is a titan. He will never die. Well, that's just in Greek tragedy. In the real world, Biya is going to die. It's just a question of when. It's not if, but it's a question of when. And I can say when is very, very near. It's very, very near. Do I see it? Biya is not going to outlive 2026. He may survive it in May. But in the next few months, Biya will be history. So if you're already preparing, now is the time to prepare. My analysis is whoever wants to win and control Cameroon has to start preparing for the succession struggle now. They have to start preparing. Whoever is fastest in preparing for this succession struggle is the person who is going to win Cameroon. Is the person who is going to control Cameroon after Paul Biya. When Paul Biya dies, the guy who is going to control Cameroon is the guy who is going to act fast to make things work. If you are slow, you're going to lose. So if you want to be the next ruler of Cameroon, you better start planning, take action. Don't sit and just be dreaming, because the power will pass you by. People are already jockeying for position. Most of them don't want to irritate Biya and his family. They are doing it in very, very clever ways. But the succession struggle may be secret, but it's ongoing. It has begun. So don't be deceived. It has begun, and we're announcing it on this show today. The power struggle is not secret anymore. It has begun. If it is secret, now we're telling you, nobody is talking about it. People are only whispering, but we're talking about it in the open. This show has brought a topic that many people don't even dare to talk about it, but we will dare to talk about it and bring the show to you. So you've listened to us. We've presented what happens to Cameroon when Paul Biya dies. Nobody is talking about this. What do you think? What do you think of our analysis? Do you support our thesis or do you disagree? If you disagree, please go to the comment section and write about your ideas. We want to hear from you. We do not like this show to be a monologue. We want to express ourselves, and we expect you also to express yourself. So let's have a dialogue. This show has to be a dialogue because this is the best way we can move Cameroon forward. This is the best way we can move Africa forward. If you like this channel, and if you like the way we analyze the news, please go and subscribe to this channel so that you'll be getting new videos whenever we upload them. Okay? If you can do this, we're going to appreciate this a whole lot. Do this as quickly as you can. Please, thank you very much. May God bless you.
Selling a service or a product? Need buyers? Use the African Nation TV as a channel to reach many viewers. Act now and call Prince Ojong at 240-350-1131. That's 240-350-1131. Act today.